to this week's episode of Inside the Headset presented by CoachComm. This week, we sit down with Ben Gibboney, defensive coordinator at Carnegie Mellon. In this conversation, Coach Gibboney discusses how he got his start in the coaching profession, his unique journey to where he is today, and being selected as the 2023 Division III Assistant Coach of the Year by the AFCA. But first, a word from CoachComm.
Deuce left, check with me. If they're in quarters match, we're going to Pittsburgh or Ohio.
They're in zero.
Let's go Hippo, Seattle, wide choice. If we call the protection right, it's 6.
When a play call is the difference between winning and losing, your headset choice could be your most important decision. When the call counts, CoachComm is the only choice for clear, dependable communication. Visit CoachComm.com for more info.
We got it, guys. Good job.
Now, let's get inside the headset with Coach Gibboney.
Coach, what's happening, man? How you doing?
No, I'm doing great, Mario. How about yourself?
I'm fired up to be on with you, man. Obviously had a little pre-podcast talk, man. I'm really excited about some of the things we're going to dive into because you kind of got a very unique journey that you've been on so far.
Yeah, appreciate you having me. One, this is really awesome to be included in this podcast and getting to talk to you. But yes, I had a little bit of a roundabout way back to the chair I'm sitting in right now.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, let's go ahead and dive on into that, man. But before we get started, the first question I always ask is, what point in your life did you decide you want to be a ball coach?
Yeah, I think I always knew. I grew up in central Pennsylvania. My father was a football coach. He actually grew up on a dairy farm, so. Thankfully, my grandfather was okay with, being a farmer and sports. And my father was able to get out of the farming business and he got into high school coaching. So spent a lot of time with him in that realm, obviously, but he spent time as a high school coach. He spent time as a college coach, a head coach as well. And then he's been a coordinator for many years. He just retired a few years ago. I actually had him doing data breakdowns for me the last few years. I put him to work in his retirement. He couldn't get away. But my mother was a volleyball coach. My older brother is a college head soccer coach. My sister was a Division I All-American volleyball player at Delaware, and she's the smart one. She's out of the coaching business.
Oh, yeah.
She's got sports in her blood. So I've always been around it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I sometimes don't know what else I would be doing if I wasn't coaching, if that makes sense. But it's always been, I went to school to be a history teacher and I was going to be a high school coach and then kind of pivoted at the last second to saying, I just want to coach.
Yeah. Yeah. What's funny is, over the years doing this podcast, you have a ton of people that have had parents that have been in the business, and it's polar opposites. You either are all in, you want to coach, or you just running so far away from the profession that you just totally end up in something totally different. So you definitely lean towards the family biz per se, and none of the moves, the hours, none of that stuff kind of pushed you away at all, huh?
I mean, so there was a lot of people helped raise my siblings and I, especially in the fall. So football coach and volleyball coach in Pennsylvania, everything was in the fall. So they were gone all the time. A lot of my time was just spent either at a volleyball practice or at a football practice or in a weight room, you name it. So it's just kind of all I really knew growing up. And it was fun. It was a great way to grow up.
Yeah. So you end up playing college ball at Susquehanna. Did I say that correctly? And
correct.
Played Division III football. Played all 40 games through 4 years, and immediately got going. So tell us a little bit about that first gig, because I think we're going to have a lot of people that listen to the podcast that might be trying to seek that first opportunity, which is always, in my opinion, the hardest one to get. So how did you get your foot in the door?
Yeah. So I was playing at Susquehanna. I finished my senior year, and I was all set to student teach. Like I said, getting ready to be a history teacher, and then. I pivoted last second and I'm like, I don't think I want to be in a classroom. I'm a teacher. That's what coaches are.
Yeah.
But I don't think I was as, I can't think of the word I'm trying to think. I wasn't as all about history as I was football. Yeah. And I felt like I was going to be cheating students in classrooms versus like, I'm here just so I could go out onto a football field and coach. So I ended up not doing it. And so, my plan was to hang at, Susquehanna and have a grand old time as senior spring semesters often go. But my mother shut that down. She said, "You're not doing that." So I ended up doing an outdoor course. out in Western United States. I slept in a tent for 90 straight days and got college credit for it. So I wasn't actually around to try and hawk down a first job. So I think if I would have stayed on campus, I may have had a shot at an entry-level position at the school I was at. I still have a great relationship with Coach Briggs, who I played for. But I ended up, like I said, my father was a college coach, so he was a high school coach until my last fall. So he could coach Friday night, come watch me play Saturday.
Yeah.
As soon as I left, as soon as I finished playing, he was the defensive coordinator at Juniata College. So had a little bit of an in there to get my first gig. So I got to coach with my father for 2 years as an intern defensive back coach.
Okay. So now, we like I said, we had a pre-podcast talk, and I realized you spent some time coaching with Dad. Like that experience, obviously you've been in the business for a while. I mean, if you're coach, you got a ton of responsibility, regardless of where you are on that totem pole. How was that experience working with Dad in that fashion?
Yeah, first and foremost, the most important part of those 2 years was just getting to spend time with my dad.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, once you become an adult after college, you're away and you don't get that time. So that was I was at home. Like that was the town I grew up in. So I got to spend time with my younger sister. She just got a couple extra more years of just being around family. So that time was great. But as a Division III coach, I know you spent some time in that realm. You have every responsibility. You're everything to all sorts of areas. But I was able to learn to do defense. I was a 4-4, a robber safety. I didn't even backpedal much in college. So got to do some 4-3 stuff. So it was good to learn some new defenses. Like I said, I think the most important part was just time. Just more time as I kind of figure things out. So that was my big takeaway from that experience.
Yeah, and so you get those 2 years, you have a lifetime of experience just seeing the game, with your dad, being a coach. But all of a sudden you step away. You go to Shippensburg University as a graduate assistant. So not this time your dad is not there. You know what I'm saying? So this is a little bit more probably still towards your first move. Your first time kind of kicking through that door, per se, but you have experience, so it should be a little bit easier. But how'd you go about getting that graduate assistant opportunity? Who'd you know there?
Yeah,
all that good stuff.
I think a lot of it is your network, right? As everybody knows, especially in our profession, I think. Rocky Reese was the head coach at Shippensburg at the time. He was actually the previous head coach at Susquehanna prior to the guy that I played for at Susquehanna, and then there was also some connections to the defensive staff as well. My father and their staff had connected, only an hour and 15 minutes away.
Okay.
But I think so. I had a couple connections there with my network, but it was a really good move for me. One, I got to further my education. I got that master's degree on my resume now. But I got shipped to the D line. So that was played safety, and I was working in the secondary, and then they're like, "Hey, you're going to coach our D line." So that was certainly a growth spot for me. I learned a lot. I don't know how great I was at it, but I certainly learned a lot. I know that.
Yeah. Well, the story's about to get super interesting, man, because we're sitting here with the AFCA Division III Assistant Coach of the Year, right? And so most people could imagine that you just got better jobs and just kept killing it in the game and all that kind of stuff. But it actually gets super interesting after this brief stop, right? You're there for 2 years, learning a lot of ball, get your degree as you mentioned, and then. Then what? What happens next for you?
Yeah. So the ideal goal is, right, you spend a couple years doing the grunt work as an intern, as a graduate assistant or something like that. Ideally, it's 2 years and you get a full-time job. I went 4 years and then I didn't have a full-time job. So I ended up out of football for 5 years. So the move for me was my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, was working for the Philadelphia Eagles. I didn't have a job, so to Philadelphia I went. I decided it was better to be with her than have her chasing me around doing something that I didn't have anything set up. So I ended up tagging on with a nonprofit organization called Playworks. It's a national nonprofit based out of Oakland, California. I don't know how many cities they're in at this point, but it was like 20 some at the time. And what ended up happening was I was working with underserved elementary schools. I was stationed in West Philadelphia. Right by University of Pennsylvania. And we were working with kids at recess and throughout the school day trying to promote positive culture through play. and helping school environments and getting back, academic time and reducing behavioral issues at schools. And it's a great program. I haven't checked up on it lately, but it's worth a look. Playworks, it's a good spot. So I grew a lot as a human being, being from central Pennsylvania, now working and living in Philadelphia. That place changed me a lot. I give that city and then also that organization a lot of credit to my growth as a human being.
Absolutely, man. Well, kind of as we mentioned, that's not what probably was expected as people that traditionally listen to the podcast, because, it's the next gig. So I would like to go back to that point where, how you get done, you got your master's, like you said, you're ready to go hit this business running with a full-time gig. How was that process when you couldn't find anything? You're probably applying for some jobs, hitting up some coaches, they don't got anything or not getting the feedback. How long did you wait? What was that like for you?
Yeah, it was the first couple years were interesting. All of a sudden I had, I was done with work and I was home at 5:00 and I had time to go eat dinner and time to go drink some beers or time to travel and see friends, you name it. So it was like the first year or so was like this crazy, like, I can do all sorts of time with my life. I have so much time. And then by the end of it, I had a great job and I loved it and it was very fulfilling. But at the end of it, I was like, I wanted ball back. Like nothing felt more natural and nothing was more rewarding and more fun for me personally. So at the end, I started sending floaters out to try and get back in. Just a couple small Division III schools out in the Philadelphia area. No biters, no takers. And then eventually my wife and I just decided to move to Pittsburgh. So I was working in an elementary school again for another year, and I ended up finding a part-time job at Carnegie Mellon. So I was telling, we talked about this a little bit ago, but Coach Lackner, who's the longtime head coach at Carnegie Mellon, had coached against my father when he was a head football coach in college, and luckily that helped my name get pulled out of a pile, and I became the part-time defensive back coach for Coach Bodner, who was our defensive coordinator for 5 years. It was a good run.
Yeah, man, and that's interesting because I think we so often cut the TV on Saturdays, when we're free, and we watch the Division I universities, play because they're the ones typically on TV more, and you just think of a coach being this full-time guy that is, that's his only gig. The reality of it is you got so many Division IIIs, you got so many, Division IIs that budgets are kind of different, or where you do have these part-time roles. So there's a lot of guys that were currently in the profession that are kind of doing what you're talking about, where you have this one gig that you probably pays a little bit more to bills, and you got this other gig that's, hopefully leveraging your opportunity to be to be full-time at some point in time. So just how was that balance? Because you say part-time, but I know it was full-time work for sure.
Yeah, no. So I was basically back to GA rule.
Yeah.
So I didn't have kids at the time. So I have 3 now. We have 3 kids, my wife and I, and they're all 5 years or younger. So we're in it right now. But when I was working at the elementary school and football at Carnegie Mellon, it was get up and get to work early so I can do football stuff before my actual job started. And then it was get in my car and sprint to practice, go to practice. And then it would be meet with my guys after practice to try and make sure we're ready to win football games on Saturday. And so those turned into normal coaches' hours, I would say. But obviously it wasn't all football all the time. But yeah, I was, helping recruit and do everything. I was the data entry guy. I mean, I was another 5 years, honestly, of being like a Division III intern GA type thing. Again, really good for me. But it was, you toss 9 years of that stuff in. That's a lot of grind to get your first full time gig for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And just how was term that gets tossed around probably way too loosely in a profession is the work-life balance. Like clearly at this point in time, you have 2 separate jobs, and then the way coaching is anyways, it's about 50 different jobs. Like you said, recruiting, data entry, coaching, teaching, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, you're doing 100 things a day. Obviously your wife is very supportive and knows your passion and what you want to do. Like, just how is that work-life balance, still trying to be a great husband at that point in time as well?
Probably not great, would be my answer.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate. I mean, she's a sports junkie too. I already mentioned that she worked for the Eagles, but she was a college basketball player. She actually could have went and probably been a softball pitcher at any college in the country at Division I level. She had all sorts of opportunities. So she's a sports person as well. So that helps. So she's actually a fun person to talk to about just anything, football, team stuff. Like she's really good at. So I think that is part of it. So she's been a great support, but also just a person that knows what it's all about. It's not like a foreign thing to her.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, it's a 3-month sprint. When I was in that role, it was a 3-month sprint. The season ended, and then I was back to having time after work, and I could still recruit and come in on weekends to help out. But things slowed down, so I would get a lot of it back. After the season ended.
And now, a quick word from Hader Athletic. Since 1954, Hader Athletic has been your trusted partner in football practice equipment. Handmade in the USA with care and dedication, our products are crafted to elevate your team's performance. But what truly sets us apart? It's our unwavering commitment to customer service. When you reach out, you'll be speaking to a real person with extensive product knowledge that prioritizes you getting your equipment fast. Experience the Hader difference today. Visit HaderAthletic.com and join the community of coaches who trust us for quality, reliability, and expertise. Hader Athletic. For coaches, by coaches. Save 15% on your next order by using promo code AFCA 2024 at checkout. Now, let's get back to the episode.
So as far as, once again, we're going to get to this here shortly about being assistant coach of the year, but, you're currently the defensive coordinator during this time. Once again, is a little bit unconventional in terms of in terms of balancing the two jobs, in terms of the 6-year gap that you had. So at this point in time, you really only had that non-full-time experience, all the way up to this point, but you're always sharpening your tools because your next job is the defensive coordinator role. So, how are you making sure that you were, not just, defensive backs? I mean, I know you spent some time at the defensive line, but how did you make sure you knew how linebackers play, good drills for those guys, how they deployed and cover for, how did you stay sharp while you were just doing all this other stuff?
I think the easiest part, as a secondary coach, is you're staring at everything in front of you. Yeah. But like the overhangs, your nickel spots, your outside linebackers playing in space, all that stuff kind of naturally kind of just molded together. It was, for our secondary guys to know what was going on, they had to know what was going on. Right. Excuse me. They had to know what was going on with the guys in front of them. So that in our defense, our outside linebackers are kind of already dime-like safety type kids. Yeah. So that stuff was natural. So I was able to help with those guys with pass rush and things like that. And I'll sit here and tell you my as you're saying, sharpen your tools. I would say I wasn't the best at the box stuff when I first took over, and we took some lumps, and I'm sure we'll get into it we're here in a little bit, but I wasn't up to snuff on it. And I guess you never really are until you have to be. Yeah. And then I had to be, and I wasn't where I needed to be. So I improved pretty darn quickly in that stuff. But I mean, putting yourself out there and just stretching yourself, that's when you grow and learn the most, obviously. No question. So from my first year of being a coordinator to where I sit now, there's been tremendous amounts of development in terms of football for myself.
Yeah. So let's kind of talk about that transition real quick. So obviously you had been doing this deal for 5 years, right? Or is that correct? 4 or 5 years?
Yep.
Where you were?
It was 5 years. Yep.
Yeah. You're elementary teach, or doing your role there at the elementary school, and then doing this part time. And I put the air quotes up there for you for part time. You're this part time guy, and then you get a phone call. I'm assuming what happens to get you into the current role that you're in.
Yeah, so obviously, I worked for Terry Bodner. He retired. So he retired the year before Coach Lackner retired. So he retired, and obviously I was an internal candidate, which helped my cause. Carnegie Mellon is a really special program, college, institution, just in general. So I'm sure there was probably all sorts of people that took a run at it, but I think being in that, I was a part-time coach, but I was literally recruiting. I was doing the data stuff. I was a full-time coach. And I think all that stuff helped my cause to earn the position that I did. So I think just being present, I've been talking to our AD during my part-time role, asking for more. I want more. So just, communicating with the people that eventually will be hiring, things like that. I think that helped my cause as well. and then just trying to do a good job with the job you got. So when you're looking at, so how's Coach Gibboney doing with the secondary? If they're performing, you'd like to think that that's going to transition to other positions or the whole defense in general, given the time and resources to get better and improve and be ready to do the job.
Yeah. So you get the job, and I think this is a very interesting part. You're replacing a guy that's been a defense coordinator for 34 years, right?
Something like that.
So,
yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
A long time. Bottom line is what I'm
saying.
saying.
The 80s. That's all I know. The 80s.
Yeah. He's been at it for a long time, and I mean, I think anytime when you start talking about a name and everybody that's kind of around that area of football and they know who that guy is, I think that's always a tough act to follow, right? And so you're following a well-respected, guy in this coordinator role, and you're just this young dude that, has been showing up and sprinting onto the practice field as practice was getting started for the last 5 years. So how was that? I guess from the perspective of just earning the respect of the assistant coaches, the players, showing that you deserve this opportunity.
Yeah, I think so. We've been blessed. I think the spot, we've been blessed to have a lot of continuity with our staff, both full-time guys and part-time guys. So everybody that I was stepping into this role with, at least in terms of the people that were coaching our players, they've worked with me. So that was a benefit that I had. So I think I earned their respect prior to stepping into it. And then honestly blessed with the kids. The kids, I think they were a big supporter of my application and me vying for the job. So I think relationships with the kids, I mean, being able to connect with your players and your kids and your people, your student athletes, that's going to help you out just with coaching, with anything, honestly. Coaching,
no doubt. If
you're trying to get promoted within the same program, like what your players and student athletes say about you is going to carry a lot of weight with the powers that be. So they may have helped me as much as possible. Kind of lost my train of thought and other questions I may have needed to answer there, but I remember that was the big one. But like I said a little bit ago, we took our lumps. I wasn't quite as buttoned up as I needed to be. They were actually, so I was basically took over the defense that I had been used to, and we were kind of running mostly similar stuff, which we still do as our core stuff today.
Yeah.
I remember some of my kids coming in being like, "Hey, we're doing the same stuff, Coach. We thought you'd be bringing some wrinkles and things like that." And we eventually got to some wrinkles, but that first year, like I said, we did some learning.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about that, because I think I think we're regardless of who's on the other side of this camera, whenever I'm doing these interviews, like, man, most of the time their first year is coordinating, they always talk about these lumps that they go through, and obviously the difference between the people that end up sitting in your seat as assistant coach of the year, or having success at some point in time, are the ones that are willing to embrace it and look themselves in the mirror and really do that self scouting and all that kind of stuff. You're having lumps. There's some things that you admittedly you could get sharper on. How did you attack that the professional development? After that initial season. Yeah,
I think using your own people is always a great place to start. You don't have to go to the fanciest school in the world or the fanciest program in the world to get better. Start with your own people. I think people have a lot of great ideas. In your own program, they're going to be able to provide stuff to you. So I think we started there and started identifying issues. And then we started touching base with a couple people within our network. So I was actually through one of my part-time coaches. He contacted one of his former players from a high school team he coached. His name's Scott Lewis. He just actually took the job at Stony Brook, I believe. He was at St. Francis.
Awesome.
We met with him, and he had some stuff that he pointed out to us. I think the term that he used in that meeting after my first year was like, you gotta whatever you're doing in the front and the back end, you gotta have your curtains and your drapes or something like that, and carpets. I don't know. There was a bunch of things about houses in there, and I was like, oh my gosh, just that little statement right there. Everything I do now is like, it doesn't match, doesn't match. Does the front and the back end match? Does it stop the run? Does it all, like, you can't do these coverages if you don't have it cleaned up front. Yeah. All of that stuff from there has really, just that comment right there has pushed me forward here the last 4 years.
Oh, that's awesome, man. One thing I love about the profession, man, is that, for instance, you're not going to see Papa John's calling up Domino's saying, man, how do you make your pizza taste so good? Because they wouldn't share that. But, in this profession, guys are just so willing to pour into each other. Obviously, that's big for us at the AFCA, but just on your own, just willing to call a guy and sit down and give you this, if that was the only nugget, clearly it's something that resonated with you and stuck with you. And now it's, part of how you approach, piecing some stuff together in your game plan. So, man, that's awesome. And hats off to you, man. I think, in this prideful business, and I'm not saying that you're necessarily like that, but it is a prideful business. We're all former college players, our coaches, and, athletes and all this kind of stuff. And so oftentimes ego can get in the way of growth, and that's awesome that you looked and said, okay, I gotta figure this out. And, we're willing to go and be receptive to some other people, talking about what was going on. Now, we were, prior to the podcast, again, we were talking a little bit about that 6-year stint, where you're, doing this very unique role that has not very much to do with football at all. And then, you kind of start talking about some of the culture stuff and things like that. How did you take some, that 6-year, break from the game to help you develop, as a teacher, outside of the lines, I guess?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. You never know. I think sometimes pinpointing some of, like, the culture is such a broad thing. Everyone, and it's talked about all the time.
Absolutely.
It's like the buzzword of college football and every sport in general, but it's also this vague thing. I don't know. I think a lot of it is hopefully osmosis that it happened, but I do think being a positive person at work, at those, when I was working in those elementary schools, just being a positive person was important. I truly believe that, especially at college football, like, I don't want to get on my guys for messing up unless I think there's an effort issue.
Yeah.
Unless you're, like, purposely deciding not to do what we need to do, then I'm not going to be hollering and screaming at you. If we feel like we have to get to the point where we're talking about coaching effort or coaching doing the right thing, that's when we have issues. But I think just being positive, and as long as people are trying to do the right thing and have the right mindset and approach to things, then you work with them. You work with them and you coach them and do the best with what you got and what they got, and you put it together. I think that was important. That's something I felt like I learned at those schools. Just showing up every day and being positive and looking for ways to improve. As long as people are working towards that stuff, then you keep pushing forward with those people, and you work with those people all day, any day. That was a big one, honestly. But I think, that, like, just trying to be extra positive and excited to see people, both your coworkers and the kids, when I was at those elementary schools, but now at school, when I get to see my guys on campus, I get excited, and it's genuine too.
Yeah.
It's great to see him. Saw a guy walking around in plaid sweatpants today, so we're the Tartans, so that he can just give him a hard time about his pajamas he's rolling around.
Yeah.
So he looked good. He's ready to rock.
There you go, man. Well, you're heading into another year, and this will be kind of your longest stint in a role, which is, always exciting and always positive. It can have some longevity. What would yourself today, say to that 2019 version of yourself? As far as, if you were able to give yourself a little bit of advice. I didn't prepare you for this tough question.
No, that's all right. I mean, I think put your kids in places to succeed. I think ask them to do things that is fair of them to do on a football field. I feel like at times in 2019, I think it was, so my first year was actually COVID. I got hired a week before everyone got sent home. So I had a spring season.
Okay.
So it was another unique year, but we just weren't buttoned up. I was asking kids to do things on a football field that it wasn't fair to them. They weren't going to be successful. It wasn't their fault.
Yeah.
So trying to put that would be my advice. Don't ask kids to do stuff that they can't do, whether it be the skill set that they're bringing to the table or the scheme that you're asking them to do.
Yeah.
That was the big part. I feel like the relationship stuff, though, I feel like we've done a great job of caring for our kids and actually genuinely, we genuinely love our kids around here, and we enjoy seeing them and spending time with them. I think that is a thing that I don't know if, I just feel like it's natural here. I don't know if that's something that's different than other places, but it's been natural and it's been part of our program culture and identity even prior to me starting here. The guys that ran the program, but prior to our staff team that is here now.
That's awesome, man. Well, I'm going to transition a little bit away from football real quick. Now, I know you're a part of, helping coordinate the Beat a Match, getting the game, Bone Marrow Foundation drive there. Brought in 119 bone marrow donors, and myself and Andy Talley, who was huge in that whole deal, former Villanova head coach. I'm really good friends with him and part of helping him drive his mission. And I know us at the AFCA in general, we tend to make sure he always has some time to speak. So I saw that. I thought that was awesome. I know you're involved, to what capacity and why was that important for you and the program to make sure that.
Yeah. I mean, that's an easy program, an organization to get behind right there.
Yeah.
Everything that it stands for and what it's all about is, it's a no-brainer.
Right.
Whatever I'm doing for football, how important I think it is, or how important our culture thinks it is, or America thinks it is, it's nothing compared to what they're trying to get done in terms of helping people to overcome tough situations. So, Coach Larson does a great job. Our head coach, he kind of divvies out certain roles and responsibilities outside of football to our whole staff.
Yeah.
So he talked to me about this one, and like I said, it's a no-brainer to jump on board with that. So that was our first year running it on campus last year. So 119, so it's a good number. We're going to shoot to get certainly more than that. Looking forward to outreach, learning things from last year to improve our outreach. There's only so many football players on a team that can do the swab. I want to figure out ways to get more people involved so we can up our numbers and eventually, hopefully help someone gets pulled from our donor list. I enjoy listening to that stuff at the convention every year, talking about, there's people that come up and talk and give their specific story about how they, their life was saved or they helped save someone's life.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to whenever that happens with the Carnegie Mellon individual and us being a part of that. So it's like I said, no brainer. That's way more important than anything we're doing.
Man, hey, on behalf of Andy Talley, I'm sure you wouldn't mind, but we appreciate that, man. That's awesome, man. But now, last thing I got for you, mentioned just a couple times throughout the podcast, you were named the 2023 AFCA Assistant Coach of the Year. Now, what's special about this is voted on by your peers. This is not me sitting in the office, not watching much ball, just picking a cool name. This is a bunch of guys that played against you, coached against you, and said, man, he's doing a hell of a job over there. What does that mean to you, especially with the award kind of been designed in that fashion?
Coach said he was going to Coach Larson said he was going to put me up for it. And I was like, all right, I know we've done some good things, but there's like thousands of Division III coaches. And so it's just still tough to wrap my head around being the name that got plucked from that. But we haven't talked about this too much. The coaches that I work with, I'm incredibly blessed being in Pittsburgh. Like, Pittsburgh's a football city, and there's a bunch of football guys that want to be involved with football, and we are able to get really, really, really good coaches to join our program.
Yeah.
Just incredibly good coaches. They could be college coaches, they could be high school coaches. They're great at what they do. So the support from my staff, to do what we've done is incredible. And then we haven't touched this. My kids, our defense. I said it when Coach talked about. I'm humbled every week by how hard they play. These kids are some of the smartest kids in the country. To get into Carnegie Mellon and the classes they have to take and the schoolwork that they have to do here to get their, our team GPA is a 3.5, 3.6. Most academic All-Americans, I think they're second overall, most in Division III. What they do in the classroom and then what they bring to the football field and how important football is to them and the buy-in. And we had a pretty big defensive line, but we ain't big anywhere else. These kids are special. They are fearless. They don't back down from anybody, and they run, man. They do the little stuff. They buy into, we're doing a bunch of stuff. We think we are, at least. Maybe we are, maybe we're not. But they buy into the meat and potatoes of football, of attack people, run to the ball, hit people, and tackle. And they buy into that. And because of all the stuff that they do, I'm able to sit here and have this conversation with you. What those kids do, I don't get to be what I am without these kids. I tell them, and this crew that's graduating, these last 3 years of us, just some pretty stupid stats. This is my first recruiting class. I remember getting in my car to come play Case Western, our rivalry game. I sat in my car, and before I drove over to campus, I literally was because I was going to have to say goodbye to some of these cats. I'm not goodbye, but I ain't going to coach a lot.
Right.
So I think that relationship and just every week after games or on Sunday when we're watching film, we're putting up stuff that we're all about. And I thank them and appreciate them more than they'll ever know. So that's what it means. It's not my award. It's our award.
Yeah.
More importantly, it's these kids. Get some film in. Watch these dudes play, man. They're awesome.
I tell you what, man. I what's always special is when I get to do this podcast with the winners, and always so selfless. Thanking the staff and thanking the players and giving them the credit. And I'm a former ball coach, man, and I recognize that, man. But at the same time, man, you put your ego to the side and said, I got to figure this out early on. You know what I'm saying? Like, you grinded your tail off. So I do want to make sure that you get your flowers, and I know that's the right thing to do and the correct thing to do. But and you've done an awesome job, and I appreciate it, man. And I've enjoyed having this conversation and learning about your very, very unique journey, man.
Yeah, that's great talking to you. Enjoyed it. It's humbling to be on here too.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Well, before I let you go, let's I don't know how much social media you do, but if you do, please drop your Twitter account if you got one, and coaches can line up and ask questions and keep up with you.
Yeah, it's at Coach Gibboney. Last name spelled Gibboney. Yeah, appreciate you having me.
Yeah, cool, man. Well, we'll make sure to link that in the show notes. Make it easy for everybody to find you. Man, keep doing your good work, man. We're excited about you, and I look forward to seeing you there in where we at next year? Charlotte in 25, man.
Is that where it is?
That's where it's at.
Do it again.
Yeah, all right, brother. All right, man.
Yeah, hopefully I get to meet you in person.
Yes, sir. I will make sure that happens, man. All right.
Yeah, take care.
CoachComm has been delivering tough headsets for tough teams for more than 31 years. It's why 97% of FBS teams and thousands of high schools across the country rely on CoachComm. Get the best for your team. Visit CoachComm.com for more info.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. If you'd like to learn more about this week's episode, head over to AFCA.com. There, you can access every episode and find corresponding show notes. Remember, you can catch every episode of Inside the Headset presented by CoachComm on wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. While you're there, we'd love for you to take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Your feedback helps us improve and grow. Keep up with the latest news by following us on social media. Connect with us at Inside the Headset, and remember to tag us when you share your favorite episodes. For more updates on all things AFCA, be sure to follow the @WeAreAFCA social media accounts. If you're not a part of the AFCA community yet, visit AFCA.com to join thousands of NFL, college, and high school coaches nationwide and across the globe. Elevate your coaching game with an AFCA membership. You'll gain exclusive access to the annual AFCA convention, magazine, digital library, and AFCA Insider email. Stay up to date with the latest stories and news on the AFCA website. More than just a convention, the AFCA offers continuous education, guidance, networking, and more. Celebrate the past and shape the future with the AFCA. It's about fostering exceptional coaches who create outstanding teams and even better individuals. Invest in your skills and make a lasting impact today by engaging with the AFCA. Your journey starts here.